Okay, welcome everybody. It is February 15th, 2020, and we are back together for week 5. This week we are going to be talking about building a community of inquiry, strategies for interpreting educators. Of course, we're going to be using Blackboard Ultra again, so go ahead and check that your video settings and audio settings are set up. Make sure you have no distractions and have the time set aside to fully participate. Let's go ahead and get ready. No disturbances. Shut your door if you have to. Make sure all kids, pets, spouses, everybody are out of the way so we can focus and join together to talk about creating communities. First of all, a communication check. If everybody could raise their hand, if they can see me, if their microphone is working, the video is recording up here at the top left. And looks like everybody is good to go. So go ahead and lower your hands, please. And just let me know you're here. So just a quick check-in just to make sure, see who's here. Go ahead and write your name below on the screen using the text tool at the top. Okay, looks like Esteban's here, TJ's here, Jim's here, and just waiting on Ryan. Okay, we are good to go. And for virtual listeners, thank you for being here and joining us at a later date. So of course, we're going to be talking about communities. So first of all, asking what the word community means to you. For our live listeners, go ahead and type a few words on the screen using the pen tool. That's at the top of the screen. If you wouldn't mind, pick different colors to differentiate your responses. And then for virtual students, I ask that you jot down a few words of what that means to you, and you'll post that in your missed class summary. So go ahead and use the pen tool to just share a couple of words. You can either use the pencil or the text tool. Someone said a group of people who have different thoughts and ideas and work together to grow. I like that one. Someone wrote family. Yeah, for sure. Any other ideas? Okay, let's move on. Many acting as one. Oh, I really like that one. If you want to, you can feel free to go ahead and put your hand up and explain your answer. Someone else has responded, a group living and working towards a similar goal. I like that. A lot of unity, working together, and definitely growing. So for our learning objectives this week, we will be talking about the importance of community and collaborative learning. We'll generate ideas for creation of their own learning communities, and participants will be explaining key elements of communities of inquiry. Of course, we're going to be using the Garrison text as we've been using these last 5 weeks. We're going to be using the text Thinking Collaboratively, specifically focusing on chapters 5 and 6. As always, we're going to remind everyone that deep learning requires community. We're going to be working together. Of course, there's a social element to our learning, that we learn from one another, and the learning that we take from one another can be the most crucial lessons that we have. We're going to be focusing specifically on the model of the community of inquiry. This is a different model for us as interpreters to be using. I know that we have process models for understanding the interpreting process and what that looks like. This is a model that's focused specifically on education and best practices in evidence-based learning. It has 3 parts, as you can see on the screen. There's social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence, and we'll talk about those more as we go along. As I mentioned, the communities have several parts. There's the cognitive part, which is how students are engaging with the content, how they're working on a problem or trying to create a solution. Then there's the social presence, which is where students are engaging with one another while they're simultaneously engaging with the content. And lastly, there's the teaching presence, which are the designs, the goals and directions, and the facilitation that the leaders of the class are providing. We're going to be using the COI framework to identify solutions. So there's 4 parts to that framework. For the cognitive part, there's the identification, exploration, integration, and resolution, which we've talked about in prior weeks. We're also focusing on learning and growth and what that means for teaching presence, taking turns to guide the community and also provide input on the direction of the course. So now we're going to go ahead and put some theory into practice. We're going to take some time to brainstorm ideas that we can bring into the classroom. And to do that, we're going to be answering a case study. We will be using breakout groups to talk with our teammates here that are with us live. For the virtual students, I ask that you pause the recording at this point and go ahead and fill out the Google slide that is for you. You would be in group 3 or 4. I'll have you take a few minutes, about 4 minutes. I'll set the timer and work with your group mate, and then we'll meet back together in the main room and do a quick debrief. So our breakout work that we'll be talking about is creating teacher presence. That's one element that our community, our focus as interpreters, we've usually allowed one person to lead the discussion. Our workshops have always been situated in having one person get up in front of a classroom and teach to people a specific element of interpreting or their personal perspective. So this is a bit of a paradigm shift for us. We also work very individually. We work as one interpreter going to different assignments and technically work in silos. We don't get to communicate often with each other or get together very often. So thinking of that, if we're working in silos, if we're going separately, or working individually, what are some ways that we can use to create a teaching presence, the greater understanding of teaching presence, of being collaborative within the classroom environment? I'm going to ask the participants to identify 2 or 3 ways that we can establish greater teaching presence when we're working with colleagues in that collaborative learning environment. So go ahead and brainstorm some ideas with your colleagues in the breakout room. Feel free to type that on your Google slide and then be ready to report back in just a few minutes. So let me take a quick second here to get your breakout room set up, and I will send you there. I'm going to ask Esteban and Jim to be in group 1, and I'm going to ask Ryan and TJ to join group 2. And your Google slide is in the group chat on the right side of the screen. So feel free to click the link and work together.
It presented from different views.
Everyone is now back together, so feel free to turn off your microphone. Hopefully that gave you a chance to communicate with one another. And I'm going to go ahead and take a look at your slides that you shared together. Does anyone from group 1 want to share their findings? Feel free to raise your hand. Esteban, go right ahead.
All right, so we came up with, develop courses that integrate activities that require critical thinking, get to know students from a learning perspective. Obviously, not every student is going to learn the same way. So, getting feedback from students also allows, the teaching presence to be very, very high. It allows students to develop kind of like a trust between student and teacher. Mm-hmm. And I think that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Okay, let's move on to group 2. Ryan, go right ahead.
Well, when being in situations where you kind of move from place to place, from classroom to classroom, find time to pre-plan with teachers so you understand kind of like the lesson plan for that day when you walk in. Mm-hmm. That way you're confident when you are working with your students. Mm-hmm. and talking with your students, so that you do have that you're knowledgeable in what's happening. You're not just the conduit. You're kind of that leader in the classroom as well, along with that classroom teacher.
I really like that. That's a great idea. Any other ideas from anyone? Okay. Okay, so wrapping things up, what we know is that communities of inquiry require community creation. We have to focus on the three different parts: the cognitive, the social, and the teaching presence, knowing that teaching presence is a large part of the process and of students' reaction to the course, setting aside time to really think and design communities that are focused on allowing students to work collaboratively to find solutions. Next up, remembering to use the COI framework. It's sort of like a scientific method of taking things one step at a time, identifying the problem, finding resources and more information, finding ways to incorporate solutions, and then finding an actual solution for the problem that will work for the community. Also remembering that teamwork makes the dream work, that we'll be working together to create collaboration, which creates more meaningful solutions, taking turns within the teaching presence process to have everyone's knowledge shared with the community. And then lastly, using teaching presence to create new ideas, using new designs, facilitation, and encouraging greater leadership within our community. This can be being open to new forms of technology, for example, using Collaborate or using Google Slides to work together to have more ideas and more solutions. That takes care of everything today. If there's not any questions, I'll stay here for a bit. Other than that, we are completely done. Thank you all for joining me today, and feel free to share your feedback on the presentation through the thread in Pilot. Thanks again. Have a good weekend.